Alrighty. Whew. Welcome to Conversations with Kara-Leah. I'm going to turn sideways a little bit. Today I'm coming to you live from a tiny house just outside Mount Maunganui, and I am with Leo Murray, fresh off his TED Talk yesterday at TEDx Tauranga. So welcome, Leo.
Thanks, Kara-Leah. Awesome.
For those of people that might not know who you are and how freaking amazing you are,
All right.
give us like the brief sentence or two that explains who you are.
Oh, yep. I am a human who gives a fuck.
Yeah!
Yeah. I think so often there's like this really cool thing of like, oh yeah, that guy doesn't give a fuck, and it's like seen as like a good thing.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, well, like 0 fucks given.
Yep.
And like, I have a real problem with that. We need to like flip that and get everybody giving fucks as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Alright, so Leo's a man that gives a fuck. And in particular, what areas do you most give a fuck about?
Yeah. I suppose the relationship that humans have with nature. There's like this sort of industrial revolution onwards attitude that it's like man versus nature. And within that, it's like, well, A, what about the woman? And B, like, what's this versus all about? Like, it really, we are nature, and it's that attitude of nature being this, like, external thing that we can, like, just dig up and then, like, sell to the highest bidder. And that, yeah, I give a fuck about that. That's, yeah.
So I want to talk about your TED Talk at some point, but before we go there, right, is what I'm really curious about is when did this start for you? Like, do you have a memory of like being a child or a teenager when you first went, hang on a minute, something ain't right here, golf?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was definitely a deep sense of knowing that something wasn't right. Like, obviously, that was sort of, yeah, when you're a kid, like, everything seems to be about you, and all you really care about is, like, playing or having fun or, like, getting whatever needs met in that moment that are for yourself. But I always had a sense that that something bigger than me wasn't right. And as I got older, and I suppose I got a degree that just basically taught me all about the world's problems and none of the solutions, so that was a bit of a blowout.
What was the degree in?
It was in international relations, political science, and media studies.
Okay,
and
cool.
so it was like, cool, the world's pretty screwed, and it just kind of started to like kind of put into place this suspicion that I had that we just weren't quite doing it right.
Yeah. So would you characterize yourself as solutions focused rather than problem focused? You know, like.
Yeah. Well, you get sick of your own voice if you carry on, if you stay in the problems for too long. You get sick of just having that attitude, I suppose. If you sort of don't start walking the walk, then you just kind of like, you're going around in circles, and that is really frustrating.
So when you came out of university, so you had a degree in international relations, political science and media, what then? Where did that take you? And you had a sense of you'd been immersed in the problems for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, what the? Where did you go from there? And if you're listening, if you can give us a thumbs up if the sound is good, I would love to see confirmation that our voices are loud enough. But Leo, after uni,
like
where did you? Projecting that way is
cool.
Is good.
Yeah, I
Volume up.
graduated right in the middle of the global financial crisis.
So we're talking like 2008.
Yeah. And I went on the dole, and so that I could go on Outward Bound, because I heard that the dole could send you on Outward Bound, and while I was on Outward Bound, New Zealand elected John Key, and America elected Barack Obama.
Right.
And I heard this from our like watch leaders while I was in the bush, and I was like, oh whoa, global financial crisis. I'm out of uni, like my future's so bright, but the world's pretty screwed.
Yeah.
Barack Obama's a thumbs up, John Key's a thumbs down, like how is this gonna work?
Yeah.
And so I became a DJ.
Of course, right?
Yeah, right. That was,
of course.
That's the logical next step. And And so yeah, I partied for a living for maybe 8 or 9 years.
See, that's an accomplishment, being able to party for a living
Yeah.
as a DJ, you know,
Yeah.
and make it work.
Yeah, no, I smashed it.
Awesome,
No, just-
awesome.
yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
when did that change? When did the next thing come in then?
I think it was the same thing. Really, it was like your integrity my integrity would start to show me that I wasn't really contributing. I wasn't part of the solution. I was part of the problem. I was like airports, taxis, hotels, clubs, drugs, like whatever, you know. It's sort of, not saying drugs are bad, but like they are a crutch sometimes, and you know, it would just got to the point where I wasn't really contributing much to the human race.
Yeah.
And to the ecological context that supports us. And so I wound up back here in the Bay of Plenty where I grew up, and I'm a very privileged person. Like I acknowledge that I really got off to a good start. Like my family loved me. Both my parents are teachers, not a whole lot of money, but a whole lot of love. And so I could really, with the music and everything, I could really live anywhere in the world. And I chose to come back to my Tauranga Waiwai, this place that sort of formed me. And funnily enough, this is Tauranga, Mount Maunganui. It's like the retirement village of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it needs change. It needs change makers. And so it was a conscious decision to be like, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to sort of, start lighting fires and, not, you know.
I love that. I love that idea, because it's a big thing for me right now, the sense that so many people that are waking up or becoming conscious or whatever it is, they often are withdrawing into their own little cul-de-sacs.
Right.
Whereas my sense is it's like, like sure, withdraw when you need to do what you need to, but then it's time to step back into your community, back into the so-called mainstream, and radiate, drop seeds, create fires, and shift things from the inside out. And I definitely feel like you're an amazing example of someone who's doing that, right? Who's living that. So what was the first thing when you came back to Bay of Plenty? You've been DJing, you've been traveling, you've been partying, you're feeling like you're not contributing, but you've got this degree in, you know, international relations and political science, media. What was the first project that you began to feel like you were contributing? Like,
there were a few. I'm trying to figure out which one. I suppose the most obvious one was that I started calling myself a sustainability consultant, which is like it's just two words, and it like kind of means nothing really, and there's no qualification out there that sort of says that you can be one of those, and it started getting traction. And I think, just to speak to what you just said just now, I was also in a place where I could have also just kind of started teaching permaculture, because that was an option for me at that point, and I'm doing it now too. And what that often does is it results in people kind of like going to the land and then retreating and kind of homesteading and living, you know, living sustainably and low impact and things like that, but they don't actually have an effect beyond their life in the land, and it's kind of all about survival. Whereas really, if you want to create change, it's got to be bigger than you and your life. Unless you're like videoing the whole thing and you've got millions of YouTube fans or something. And so that was a conscious decision that resonates with what you were saying. Of like, no, I'm going to stay here and be a part of this and try and impact. I was also a bit fed up with government after having that degree, and then also being a bit of an activist while I was living in Wellington and trying to like really affect change on a policy level from a using like the democratic process, and not really getting anywhere with that, and quite frustrated and thinking, okay, change isn't going to come from a government level, and business is kind of like it's business is kind of what's got us to face this uncertain future. Let's work on that. And so that consultancy piece was picked up by local businesses and sometimes council, and it seemed to be that the things that I could successfully send an invoice for, and therefore live, was waste. It seemed to be the thing that was kind of like people people got. Doesn't really matter where on the kind of spectrum of awareness or values, you know, you can be liberal or conservative or something, but I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that like waste is just really dumb. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so here I was, someone that was a permaculture designer that was applying permaculture ethics and principles to business solutions, focusing on waste. And so that was the first thing that started getting traction. Of Leo's come home, he's still playing music, all of the bills were still getting paid through music. And
I love it. So DJing's your day job?
Yeah.
And working as a sustainability consultant is your like
totally
is your passion piece that is supported by DJing.
It's like a perverted inversion.
Yeah. Don't give up your day job.
Yeah.
Keep DJing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was.
So did that evolve into becoming Why Waste?
That's right.
Yeah.
So why waste it? I mean, it's pretty simple, really. Why
waste?
What's going on here? And yeah, so that answers your question. That was the first thing, and it's evolved a lot since then. My offerings have like totally changed, and and I'm sort of getting it to the point now where I'm like, yeah, okay, I can be that, you know. Whereas often with business, I think sometimes it can take you over a little bit, and then you wind up. A lot of business owners, I think, wind up being like, oh, what about me? Like, where do I fit into all this? What about my life? And I think I've got it in a sweet spot. Yeah. Like I'm enjoying where it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Because even though you're in society and you're in the mainstream and you're in the city, just to point out, so we're in Leo's and his wife Tara's tiny house right now that's on a piece of land that's sort of right in the middle of the city, you know, and you've got your composting toilet. So how much waste goes out of this place? Like how much actually goes to landfill? Do you keep data, or do you have a sense of it?
If I did, it wouldn't reflect well on me at all. Because I seem to receive a lot of waste as well.
Interesting.
I seem to like, I don't know, because I teach gardening in schools, or I'm doing zero wasted events, and if I'm anywhere and I'm on the beach and there's rubbish, I'm picking it up. So it's not quite as cut and dry as like, oh, we only produce this much waste, because actually I go to the dump like every couple of months with a truck. So it's difficult for me to sort of.
But you're still separating out, and you're mindful of what comes in, and you know you're living in a way that a lot of people are not yet living.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, there's just a lot of cultural shifts that need to happen. Like a lot of people, most of their waste is biodegradable. I was part of the study that did an audit on Tauranga's waste, curbside waste, and 52.6% of that is biodegradable. 52% of the waste that's curbside pickup could actually be going to compost. Could be building soil in places where their soil sucks. That's a massive amount. Yeah, and it's so easy to just like, right? Check out the compost. Compost. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And our human waste in the industry is called biosolids. So like your shit, like people don't know how to own their shit. Let's talk about shit. It's like, well, where's that going? And it's sort of getting pumped for miles underground with drinking water, nuked with chemicals, evaporated off, and then dumped in the ocean. Yeah. And that hurts me. Yeah. Why are we doing that? Yeah. People have a thing with shit, though. Yeah, they have a bit of shit. They don't own their shit. No, people don't like shit. No, they don't like the smell. They don't want to look nice. I don't want to look at my shit. Totally. I don't want to open my composting toilet and see my shit. Nah. No, they don't. And that's it. It's it takes about 2 weeks, I say. Yeah. To use a composting toilet for 2 weeks, and it slowly goes, unpacks in the little cogs, and your brain goes, and then you go, whoa, I don't ever want to use a conventional toilet ever again. Yeah. And that's where I'm at. That's where a lot of people that come here who are familiar with this place are at. And I'm not saying I'm the first one to ever have a composting toilet. This is really common. It just hasn't permeated into the common discourse yet. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But when you start like picking apart, like what are we throwing away? Yeah. There's often like you realize how much of a disproportionate focus there is on some things over others, even though those others are, say, like the biodegradable waste, over half of what we're throwing away.
Yeah.
Everyone's obsessed with plastic and recycling, but that's only 15 point something percent of what we're throwing away. And it's like, yeah. Why are we just losing our shit over 15 point something percent, which is recyclable, when over half could be transformed into a valuable resource that we are running out of?
Yeah, which is soil, right?
Which is soil. Yeah.
Which kind of is a little bit of a nice segue into the topic of your TEDx talk yesterday, because we were talking about the earth in essence. So let's talk about that. How did you end up on the stage at TEDx? And he was the last speaker of 11, which I think says something about your ability to really anchor and hold space and command attention. Because, you know, you don't put someone on, everyone's tired by then, you know. So when you told me you were going to be last, I was like, yeah. So how'd you end up there? How'd you end up on the stage?
It had sort of been, I always knew that I was going to do a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Like for years.
Yeah.
It was hard case, really. And so I got nominated, and I went along and I met with the team, and I sort of said, oh yeah, I want to reframe our uncertain future. And they were like, you want to what? And I was like, yeah, I think that people, when they talk about future, it's all about sacrifice. And I want to just change that. Like, the future could be awesome.
Yeah.
It's not about living with less, it's about living with more.
Yeah.
And so they were into it.
Yep.
And I kind of got like assigned like a team. Well, I'd go along and I'd share my ideas, and they'd be like, sweet, and they'd ask me questions, and they're amazing. And the thing that I loved, because you go through this thing of like, oh, are you in or are you out? And I didn't care. I was just like, no, honestly, I just want to bounce my ideas off people that aren't going to respond with my ego as a concern.
Yeah.
You know, you talk with your friends or people that love you, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's great, yeah, sweet, you know. And I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I want you to be
critical thinking, right? Totally. Give me the critical thinking. I want to know, is it viable? Does it fly? Do you understand it? Does it speak to you?
Big time.
Yeah.
And they were amazing, and turns out my ideas checked out, and yeah, I picked the like kind of most critical and the meanest one of their team to be kind of like my coach. She's amazing. She's an incredible woman, Lori. But yeah, she was also like real like, okay, what are you trying to say there? And like really like having someone to help crystallize your ideas, because you've been thinking them for ages. They're clear to you, but how do you get them clear to someone else? So that was what was great about the TED Talk. Yeah.
And how did it feel, like being on the stage and delivering, and then afterwards, what was it like for you?
I remember like being introduced, and Will, the host, he was a great host, eh?
He was awesome. I liked him.
He was sort of like, you know, having a yarn about me, and yeah, apparently I'm a pretty good guy or whatever. But in that moment, I was like, okay, I've just got to just breathe, you know, because I'm about to like walk out there.
Yeah.
And my opening piece was describing this waterfall, and so I just closed my eyes, and I was just like at the waterfall, and I was just like what a great way to just kind of be cool with whatever is, be at a waterfall. So I think my content of my talk really helped. If I was up there talking about like you know, pulling like brain tumors out of people, like it would have been hard. It would have been a bit more difficult, you know, but I was like literally describing places that I love, and then convincing people that I've never met to look after those places due to the fact that they're awesome, instead of the guilt and the shame that is often motivates those messages of what they stand to lose. Yeah. We're all afraid of what we're gonna lose if we don't look after nature. That's just totally the wrong way to go about it. Yeah. It's more like, nature's fucking cool. Have you felt it recently? If not, imagine it, and then now what are you gonna do? Yeah.
But I think this is crucial, and this is one of the reasons I love you so much, because I do. You're amazing. Is that you are living in the new paradigm, which is rather than operating from fear, from being afraid, making decisions and actions and behaviors from that place, you're like falling in love with the planet and going, let's go from love. I love her, and how do I want to respond now? How do I want to act now? How do I want to behave now? And it's got a completely different energetic resonance. And to me, that underlying feeling or beingness is the power, is the thing, is the shift. Because if we keep doing what we've always done, which is acting from fear, we'll keep getting what we always got, which is fear-based stuff.
Totally.
But if we shift and begin to love the fuck out of the mother, then everything will begin to change.
That's
even
right.
more, even faster.
Yeah.
You know, so seeing you on stage for me, because I was there at TEDx, seeing you on stage and delivering this message, I got full goosebumps, particularly through the left side, which is interesting, right? Feminine, all of that. It's like, yeah, this is going to go out more and more. Shift people's way of operating, because the behaviors fall out of that. Yeah. And I love how you synthesized other people working in this area, like Charles Eisenstein. The way you brought in his languaging and his wording, the story of interbeing, in such a beautiful way. And it just feels like where you're coming from, there's such a body of scholarship behind it already. And you're just magnifying those messages in a way that's accessible for people to access them.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that. Like, these aren't all my ideas. I am not this creative genius. I just know a good idea when I see one. And then recently, over the last couple of years, I've just started to just have new bodies of knowledge emerge and them dovetail perfectly into existing ones. And I'm like, wow, Joanna Macy's work with the work that Reconnects and Deep Ecology works perfectly with Charles Eisenstein, who's kind of the more heartfelt version of Daniel Pinchbeck, who's more like a burner and an activist and a revolutionary, and then all of sort of Fukuoka's piece, which was drawn on by Holmgren and Mollison to create permaculture, and then permaculture led me to Eisenstein. So it's this web of all of these visionaries and thought leaders, and then I suppose I'm at the bottom of the world, where people aren't so looking at all of that, and I'm just saying, hey, well, you guys seen this cool stuff?
Yeah. To me, it feels like you synthesize it.
Yeah.
Like you read it, you digest it, and then you're able to share it with people who are never going to read that stuff.
Yeah.
And then that'll set them on a new, course of action. So what is your vision for the future? Like because often when people think about the future, it's very pessimistic or whatever. When you feel into the more beautiful world that you know is possible, what does that world feel like? What does it look like?
Yeah. For me, I suppose it's pleasure. There's this kind of notion that like the word hedonism has this really bad reputation. It's like, oh yeah, you're just having too much fun over there.
Yeah.
And I believe that in a more beautiful world, we only do what feels good.
Yeah.
Because why else would feeling good exist? Things that feel bad, you don't do, and the things that feel good, you do, and that any kind of sort of, I know that a lot of people would be like, whoa, hold on, there's heaps of things that feel good that aren't good for us or the rest of us, like binging on ice cream.
Doesn't actually feel good though.
Well,
if you really tune in, it doesn't feel good.
Because none of us are connected with pleasure at all.
Yeah, when you're really connected with true pleasure, and I know this from a tantric perspective. Right?
Okay.
Is that I go by pleasure as one of the things, follow the pleasure.
Yeah.
But when you're deeply connected and tuned in, and you're being honest about it, there's a difference between really feeling pleasure and using something to avoid pain. So if you're binge eating on ice cream, what you're actually doing is stuffing and suppressing pain, which is not soaking up the pleasure.
Yeah.
You see, because when you're really truly connected, you can feel the difference.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, is that if you're pleasure seeking, if you're living from pleasure, you gotta be connected.
You got to know what your pleasure is.
You gotta know what your pleasure is. You gotta know what it feels like. You have to be embodied.
Yeah.
And I feel like embodiment is a big part of who you are and how you operate.
Okay.
Is that you're embodied.
Well, I'm in my head right now because I'm gutted because I think I love ice cream, but now I'm like, fuck. What am I going to do about that? Because I really enjoy ice cream.
But really, like, so next time you're eating it, like, smell it,
I gotta
and
know.
savor it, and feel it, and feel how much pleasure there is as you're eating it, until you feel when all of a sudden the pleasure's diminishing. And then you know.
And then you know.
And then you're like, okay, now I'm
going to call you up. I'm going to be like, Kara-Leah, I'm halfway through an ice cream. Do I really like this ice cream, or do I think I like it?
Well, you can just tune in and go, am I running away from some uncomfortable feelings right now?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But that's what we do with, like, super yachts and helicopters and, like, hookers and blow. Like, it's just, we're all...
It's status chasing.
No one knows what it is that they actually need or want.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a big part of the talk, was how I've always been sort of suspicious that this Kiwi version of the American dream isn't actually making us happy.
Yeah.
Or that our version of success isn't going to help us have any kind of pride in the lives that we're living. And so that's a big part of how I feel like I've started to live in this new story, is to just really, like, question everything. This whole culture that we've inherited, that no one's really, like, asking, hey, is this working? Like, whose idea was this? And far out. It's been really good for my mind, my body, everything, to just strip it all back and then rebuild it according to my ethics, my, like, what's really important to me. Yeah, there's a few little people on the screen.
I know, they can see. Hi, everyone who's watching. So going back to the future, you're at pleasure, you feel pleasure, I get that. So there's a lot of pleasure in the future. What else? What else does the future bring us? Besides a really, right relationship to pleasure.
Yep.
Right? We love pleasure and we indulge in it, but not to the detriment of any other being.
That's right. So it's like our self-expression doesn't cross over into other people's self-expression. And with the 10 principles of Burning Man, that's the interplay between civic responsibility and radical self-expression. If you express yourself violently and that crosses over into someone else's experience, you're not practicing civic responsibility.
Right.
And so in terms of, like, what's going on in the future, a key part to all of this is giving a fuck. How do we do that? Is acknowledging that we are a tiny, tiny, tiny little piece, 7.6 billionth of one admittedly super organism, which is a very small part of this phenomenon that is life, of which we are, like, inherently connected to. And so it's not too hard to sort of imagine a more beautiful world where people are actually treat each other with respect.
Yeah.
When we can acknowledge that, like, you are that person.
Yeah.
And
I am you and you are me.
Yeah,
And, like,
we
love each other.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so that, obviously there's heaps to work on there. Like, no one's carrying on like they've cracked that, but there's a path towards that, not othering people and not judging them and not othering nature. Like, hey, cheers for, like, growing, Mr. Broccoli, like, being me being you, and that's another really crucial part of the future, is that because we're just such, Homo sapiens, like, human brains, wisdom, wisdom, is that we seem to, like, have unleashed or, like, found all of this energy within the world of chemistry, but pretty much all of the processes that in the future that can be go beyond sustainability, but essentially to sustain our lifestyles, need to be from the biosphere. They need to be living systems. And so, yeah, pretty much stuff that lives, stuff that comes from plants, which photosynthesizes, which is a really powerful process. And if you think about it, fossil fuels are just sunlight that just came through the atmosphere and caused photosynthesis hundreds of thousands of years ago. It's been stored in the ground, and now we're digging it up. It's not actually anything massively special. It's just biological processes then, but they're in the ground for a reason.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we start to just kind of not, you know, the big news recently is like, oh, electric cars aren't actually going to solve the whole thing, because in order to get all the batteries, we're going to have to just dig up the earth some more.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, like, we're all forgetting that our great-grandparents probably only travelled like a few 100,000 kilometres in their whole lives.
Yeah.
If they immigrated from Europe to New Zealand, that was the largest piece they've ever done. It's possible they even did it under sail. So we just seem to have gotten really, our culture seems to have gotten obsessed with preserving and conserving what's now. And if some people, if there are conservative people sort of criticizing, like maybe the way that I project reality into the future, I like to explain to them that I'm way more conservative than them.
Yeah, because you're looking at how it used to be way back when you just lived in your local area.
Totally.
And only the adventurers were the ones who would go beyond the village borders.
And they're just trying to conserve a snapshot of what has been the last 10,000 years since we sort of stopped moving around. And I'm trying to conserve the whole thing. Yeah. They're just trying to conserve 2 generations.
Which is attachment.
Totally.
Yeah, the more we're attached to things being a certain way, the less we're able to just flow with what's needed. And if we don't flow with what's needed, we're fucked. I mean, you know, that's...
Well, that kind of brings up a big piece for me. It's like, okay, well, why do you act? Like, on the surface level, it's like, yeah, it's because I love nature, but it's like, okay, well, nature will be fine without you.
Yeah.
Like, nature's cool, don't worry about it. It's not actually true, but I'll just park that. It's more like, what am I attached to that makes me feel like I want for humans to exist? Like that anthropocentric worldview, which places humans at the center, and then, you know, God and Jesus and I don't know, and like the earth is at the center of the universe, and it's like, nah, actually, like, we really don't mean anything, and life is the meaning of life, and that's what we're contributing to. Sometimes not. and so I get to the bottom of my attachments, and I'm like, whoa, the thing that I'm really doing all this for is what I feel is beautiful about the human race. Like, when I hear a song, some of the artwork that I've witnessed, like some of the beautiful things that humans create, I'm like, yes, we do have a place on this planet. We do have a place. And we are nature, like, observing itself and having a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
And that's so sweet. And that seems to be that's the attachment that I can't give up. And I know the Buddha would be like, he'd probably give me a break. He'd be like, yeah, man, like, you can have that attachment. There's some cool stuff out there.
Yeah, there is. Oh, that's beautiful, and like feeling you say that. I feel it in my body. Like, yeah, humans are amazing. Humans are extraordinary. Totally. Humans are beautiful. So let's celebrate each other. Let's take pleasure in each other. Totally. Let's love the fuck out of each other and watch the more beautiful world create around us. You know? Yeah. All right, before we wrap up, 2 things I want to touch on is, 1, I want to know about Regenerate, which is one of your current epic projects, and 2, Living the Change Catalyst weekends. Yes. So let's start with Regenerate, and just tell us a little bit about that, because it's freaking, I went to it, it's amazing. So
cool.
Give us the rundown on Regenerate.
Yeah, Regenerate was sort of just bubbling away in the back of my mind for a while. I use it as a case study on a permaculture teacher training course I was on like 3 years ago. And I sort of designed this thing in accordance with like these kind of frameworks for how people take on information. A mentor of mine, Finn Mackesy, was sort of explaining how we sort of go through all these patterns, and I think they're fairly common in education, but they were new to me at the time, and I realized just how important celebration is as an integration piece for learning.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, we're not partying enough.
Boom.
With a purpose, and when we have a purpose or a learning, we don't party, and then when we party, we don't have a purpose or a learning. And I was like, let's put these together, and then I was like, and because I'm just obsessed with going beyond sustainability into something that's regenerative. It's like, wow, so we're essentially creating a party with a purpose. So it's going to be like a festival with an impact. And I also fairly active in what Kiwi Burn and Burning Man and this global movement of burner culture. And what we do is we build like quite spectacular artworks, and we hang out with the art for like a week, and then we set it on fire and we just like lose it, and it's this incredible, quite cathartic experience to watch like these massive monuments to creativity just burn. And that's cool. But I've been doing it for about 10 years now, and I'm like, okay, cool, what's next? Like, let's build a school or a library and then not burn it.
A bonfire instead, right?
Totally,
Still had the fire there.
Let's have fire over there.
Yeah. I like it, yeah.
And so that was kind of where Regenerate came from. I was like, let's just do Building Man instead of Burning Man,
Yeah.
And I toyed with kind of co-opting the movement and steering it towards something, but like instead of trying to, I can't remember whose quote it was. It was the dude that created geodesic domes. Damn it, he's got a funny name. He's an awesome guy. He just said, if you want to change the world, don't try and replace the systems that already exist. Just create new ones that make them obsolete.
Yes, love it.
And it's like, okay, cool. Burner culture and Burning Man, like, I'm going to say this out loud, it's becoming obsolete. Like, sorry team. You
heard it here first.
Yeah. And then there's this other thing that's emerging, and it's like, let's just activate community, have self-expression, like do all of those things that we love to do.
Dance our asses off.
Decommodification, the gift economy, these are all totally welcome in the future, and totally welcome in a regenerative future. But instead of burning everything, give it a purpose. And it doesn't have to be putting trees in the ground, which is what the regenerates that we've been doing have been doing. That's this is the time of year that you plant trees.
Yeah.
Like, if it comes to December and we're like, oh, well, who needs a regenerative impact?
Someone might be like, let's build a tiny house in 2 days.
Totally.
Awesome. We're going to do a regenerate around it, throw big parties. Everyone comes on site, build the thing,
bam,
party.
So,
this is how the I'm pretty sure this is how the Amish operate.
Right.
Like a lot of communities back in the day, this is how they would do it. If they wanted to build something, the whole community would come together, they would build together, and then they would eat together at the end and party. Maybe not with the epic sound systems that we have now.
We've got to have sound systems.
We've got to have sound systems. Cool. And so Regenerate Party with a Purpose. If you want to know more about that, they can go to the Facebook page.
Yeah, and we just launched a sweet video that kind of
check the
shares
video
the
out.
Vision and the vibe, and it's got some great footage.
Because you want people to copy this, right? This is going to be open source.
That's right. It's really not about us. It's not about this. It's about creating a solution it's about creating a model that can be scalable and replicable, and then empowering people to essentially activate their own regenerate anywhere in the world. Yeah. And it's like, oh, cool. Here's the procedures. Here's your health and safety stuff. Here's a budget. Here's like media collateral and branding. Yeah. And just sort of saying, hey, like, essentially, if a farmer wants to, if the writing's on the wall with the dairy industry, and he's like, oh, I want to, revegetate and create like a zip line through my farm, which would bring in heaps of money, then how do I do that? Oh, boom, you can just activate temporary community with this model.
Yeah, you throw a Regenerate Party with a purpose. Totally. Do all your planting, etc. Create your zip line.
Sweet.
Bam.
It's like Bruce.
Any farmers out there listening?
Bruce is he's a festival planner now. because we hand it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Epic.
Very
Okay.
much for that. Yeah.
So I love it. Regenerate is just gonna go.
Yeah, totally. And regenerate isn't sort of mutually exclusive from the living the change catalyst
So
weekend.
let's talk about that.
But it's sort of,
It's one and the same.
it's
in a way.
bringing in the same work. It's like, okay, how do we learn? Okay, it's certainly not I have all the knowledge, Kara-Leah has all the knowledge. People come and we kind of like sell it to them or like hand it to them. Here's a book, it's all in the book, don't worry. It's really about creating a container where people can, where we facilitate a learning experience. And the teaching doesn't actually have to happen, but learning thrives.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we're all learning from each other, often in sort of ritual spaces or ceremonies, you know, and that's how people have learned forever.
Yeah.
And it's only really when they started like plugging people into machines that they sort of had to fit them through these like systemic kind of things. And I've learned, I did really well in the school system, and like I got nothing major beef against it, but I've learned so much since in a variety of other sort of formats. And so that's what the Catalyst Weekend is. It's not like, we're even not calling it a retreat intentionally. It's in the like, hey, you know, maybe take your Friday off and spend the weekend with us. We're going to eat amazing food. We're going to hang out in this lush place. But it's beyond a retreat too. It's kind of like, it's a weekend for people who have received all this information about the world is changing, and there's like the ice caps are melting and the Gulf Stream is slowing down, and there's acid rain, and there's lots of crazy stuff, and it can get really overwhelming. And how do you even receive that kind of shit as a human? Because you just like, whoa, like overwhelm, or like denial is really common. Paralysis, like fuck, what do I do? Like turn the TV on, which is like, what's that? When you get distracting, you know, you distract yourself. And then there's a whole lot of other things that humans do in response to this really full-on feedback loops that are coming from nature. And so there's a whole bunch of people who've said to Kara-Leah and I, they're like, oh, well, what can we do? And so we knocked our heads together and we were like, well, let's catalyze an empowering weekend where people can leave and go, I know what I need to do. I want to do something, I'm not sure. I'm going to go to this weekend and I'm going to walk away. We're not going to give you your mission.
No.
You're just going to get clarity. You're going to get tools and techniques for people to find what the change that it is they can make. And then the confidence in the community support to go and create that change. And so I'm really excited about it. We just need to get a few more people on board, and it's like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And
I love the way you describe it. So those of you that don't know, so Leo and I are doing this thing, Living the Change Catalyst Weekend in July. It's going to be the first one, so if you're watching this down the line, don't worry, there'll be more coming for you. And I love that. We're not going to give anyone their mission.
No way.
But the mission is already inside you, and if you're ready to activate, catalyze, and acknowledge your mission, this is the place to come. And then, like you said, a big part of it is that community support. That you will be anchoring and connecting into other people with their mission. It makes you feel like superheroes. It's like a superhero weekend. Maybe everyone should bring a costume.
I think we've got to have costumes.
We've got to have costumes.
Well, it's like the costume is almost like,
it's mandatory.
Who do you want to be? And be that. And what's the future that you want? Let's go there. Because if you're anything like me and you're not entirely satisfied with what's going on right now, there's totally things you can do to change that. Yeah, it's like, okay, cool.
We got the power.
Yeah, we do.
We got the power.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it's in. We know so, man.
Oh, I have heaps of costumes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're bringing costumes. Living the Change Catalyst Weekend, there will be costumes.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Epic. So nice to come and sit in your tiny house and have this conversation.
Yeah.
We've got a little gremlin up above us in the extra place who's been super quiet for this whole conversation. Thank you, Sam. That was the landing pillow. Any final words, Leo, before we sign off?
Oh no, I think this conversation is just going to keep going.
Yeah, cool. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Leo, I'm going to drop all the details in the description for the video. You can message him. You can comment on this afterwards. We'll come back on and answer any questions, any comments that come up. Thank you so much for watching. Those of you that stayed the distance, beautiful to see you. Sending you heaps and heaps of love, and just know that change is coming. It's already here. There is a new way to be, and it is a far more beautiful world. Yeah.
Oh, I do have one thing.
Yes.
It was a line that I forgot to say in my TED talk yesterday. I'm gonna say it now.
Yes. Yes.
I've been beating myself up for forgetting this. If more of us can accept that what's good for nature is good for us too, we can let Papa and Rangi out of this industrial straitjacket of infinite growth and return to the balance. I fucking forgot it.
No.